Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
but I
don't
don't
know
know
how
how
to
to
mute
mute
myself.
myself.
Oh,
Oh,
all right.
all right.
I muted
I
myself on
muted myself
live.
on live.
Hey Sam,
Hey
what's up,
Sam, what's
Kelly?
up, Kelly?
Hi,
Hi,
Sam.
Sam.
All right,
It is
Sharona, it is 6:03. You want to go
6:03. You want to
ahead
go
and
ahead and
let's get this
let's get
kicked
this
off?
kicked off?
Or do we want to give it
We
a
want to
couple
give it a
seconds?
couple seconds.
Let's go ahead
Let's
and
go
get
ahead
this
and get
kicked
this
off.
kicked off.
All right.
All right. Well,
Let's see. We have. All right. Well,
all
today
right.
is
Well, today
Sunday,
is Sunday,
December
December
20th
20th
of
of
2020,
2020,
and we are
and
going
we
to
are going to
welcome you
welcome
to
you to
American
American
Descendants of
Descendants of
Slavery,
Slavery,
Selful
Selful
Soul
Soul
Sunday. It is
Sunday.
the
It is the
very
very
first
first
Sunday where
Sunday
we are
where we
under
are
the
under
new
the
name
new name
Selful Soul
Selful Soul
Sunday. It's our
Sunday. It's our
second live
second live
stream.
stream.
First one was
First one was
about a
about
month
a
ago
month
now,
ago now,
and I
and
am
I
your
am your
co-host,
co-host,
Shamari M.
Shamari M.
Harris,
Harris,
licensed clinical
licensed
social
clinical
worker
social
out
worker out
of
of
New York
New York
City, and I'll
City,
let
and
my
I'll let my
co-host
co-host
introduce
introduce
herself.
herself.
My
My
name is
name is
Sharona
Sharona
Johnson.
Johnson.
I am
I am
also a
also a
licensed
licensed
clinical
clinical
social
social
worker, and
worker,
I'm
and I'm
also coming
also
to you
coming to
from New
you from
York
New York
City,
City,
specifically
specifically
Harlem.
Harlem.
Hey,
Welcome,
Welcome,
all
welcome,
welcome.
welcome.
Beautiful
Beautiful
people.
people.
All right,
All
so
right,
we want
so
to
we want
welcome
to welcome
everybody
everybody
back.
back.
And
And
before
before
we
we
get
get
into the
into
meat
the
of the
meat of the
conversation for
conversation for
today we're going to be
we're
talking
going to be
about
talking about
forgiveness.
forgiveness.
So,
So,
Sharona, why don't you
Sharona,
bring
why
the
don't you bring the
people
people
up
up
to
to
speed
speed
on
on
what we
what
talked
we
about
talked about
last week,
last
and then
week,
we'll
and then
get
we'll
to the
get to the
business for
business
today.
for today.
Okay,
Okay,
so in the
so in the
last
last
Zoom
Zoom
live,
live,
not the last Zoom,
last
the
YouTube
last YouTube
live,
live,
we talked
we talked
about
about coping with
coping with
family over the
family over the
holidays.
holidays.
So some of
So
the
some of the
tips that we
tips that we
provided
provided
to,
to,
during that
during that
live
live
meet
stream,
people where
meet
they
people where
are,
they
because
are,
all
because
of us are
all of
not
us are
with
not
the same amount
with
of
the same
knowledge
amount of
about
knowledge
things.
about things.
All of us are not
Informed,
informed.
so
We got to meet
we got to
people
meet
to the
people to
levels
the
that they
levels that
are.
they are.
Have
Have
patience with those
patience
who are
with
less
those who are less
informed.
informed.
Because
Because at
there was
once
once a time when
a
you
time when
also
you
were less
also were
informed.
less
So have
informed. So
patience with
have patience
others.
with others.
We
We
also talked
also
about
talked about
indulge
indulge
responsibly. So
responsibly.
we know during
So
the
we know during the
holidays,
holidays,
American descendants of
American
slavery,
descendants of
when we
slavery,
gather
when
with
we
our
gather with our
families,
families,
we like
we
to
like to
indulge in,
indulge in,
alcohol and substances and whatnot.
and
We all know
whenever we
things,
indulge in
it can
things, it
definitely
can
like
definitely
alter us
us
and cause us
and
to,
cause
behave in
behave
ways
in
that we
ways that
typically
we
would behave
typically
when we're
would behave
sober.
when we're
So we
sober.
talked about
So we talked about
indulge
indulge
responsibly.
responsibly.
We also
We
talked
also
about
talked
focusing
about
on the youth.
focusing on the
We
youth.
got new
We got new
generations coming up.
generations
So,
coming up. So,
sometimes
sometimes
place some focus
place
on
some
them and
focus on them
informing
and
them. They
informing
want to
them. They
learn. They
want to
want to
learn.
know. They want some
They want
knowledge
some
too.
knowledge too.
Sharona, we're getting some
We're getting some
feedback, and I think
feedback, and I
everything is
think everything is
repeating. So
repeating. So I think
check
check
your YouTube
your YouTube
stream and
stream and make
it
sure that
is
it is
on
on
mute.
mute.
Yes.
Because I think that may be
Okay,
it.
okay, so if
You're on mute. I'm
you're on
on
mute, I'm
mute.
on mute.
I wonder
I
where this
wonder
is
where this
coming
is
from.
coming
How do we
from. How do
sound
we
now?
sound now?
Tell us in the
Tell
chat.
us in the chat.
Okay, so apparently we have an issue with the sound.
The sound.
We're on a
We're on a
feedback loop.
feedback loop.
Okay, so we had our producer in the background. If there, so I don't have on any extra cell phones or anything. Sharona, do you have anything on?
No, I don't have
No, I
anything
don't have
on.
anything on.
Hmm. Turn your volume
Turn
down
your
on your
volume down
computer.
on
Let's
your
see if that
computer. Let's see
helps.
if that helps.
Let's see. How is it now? How is it now? Let me know in the chat if it sounds any better. Sean, is your volume down?
Yeah, I turned my volume
Yeah, I
down.
turned
If
my
I turn it
volume
down
down. If
anymore,
I
I'm
turn
not
it
gonna
down
be able to
anymore,
hear
I'm not gonna
you.
be able to hear you.
Right, right.
Yeah, if I turn it down anymore, I'm not gonna be able to hear you.
Sharon Robinson, say something.
Say something.
Say something.
Yeah, do a mic check.
I am
I
talking
am
right
talking right
now.
now.
Hmm. All right, let's keep talking to see if he can fix the problem.
All right.
Well, it's a day outside today.
Yeah, it is. Well, I saw a bit of snow falling from the sky, but I think it was coming from the top of the buildings.
Okay, so they're saying it's looping a lot less. Whatever you turn it down some more. And the echo stopped. All right. So for those of you that have been here with us a couple of times now, you'll probably notice my background is a little different because I am not at home this week. I'm actually with my family this week. You see a little bit of a change in my scenery.
I'm still in the same space that I was the last time.
Yeah, apparently we're still having some technical difficulties. Okay. All right. So let's keep this going to see if we can fix this. Let me see if
Let me. Yeah, I pretty much, like I said, I got everything. Like, okay, so we see what Rob just said in our chat box. Um,
let me see.
well, Shamar, do you think you having those the AirPods in? Do you think that causes anything? No.
If anything, not having them in will give you more feedback.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, so Kelly is saying the echoing stopped for her. Okay, so yeah, all right. So okay, we're good now. All right. So
All
yeah.
right. Well, thank you all for your patience as we get through our technical difficulties. Technology is not always on our side.
Whew. All right. Thank you, Rob. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Rob. All right. So what I was doing was I was recapping our last YouTube live where we talked about coping with family during the holidays. And so the one of the tips that I was going over was focusing on the youth. We talked about how we should focus on the new generations that are coming up. They are definitely open and receptive to new information and education. And I think, sometimes we should spend more time with them, educating them, especially about, culture and talking to them about American sins of slavery and just providing them with the information that you have learned and just passing it along. Practicing self-care, which is something that I'm very big on. Taking care of you, guard your spirit, protect your spirit. Protect yourself and set appropriate boundaries with problematic family members. Now, I know that we all are family and we love to be united, but there are times where there are certain family members that we just can't be around. And that's okay. It's okay to separate yourself and set boundaries with that particular family member that just runs your blood pressure up. Um, it's okay to set boundaries. It's something that we don't know to do, but I just want to let you know that it's okay to do. Put yourself first. Accept the avoidance and separation may be unavoidable and may be appropriate ways to deal with some of our family members, right? Um, know your triggers. Be mindful of the things that trigger you and set you off and, either upset you, make you sad, make you feel hurt. Know your triggers, was another tip. And, pay attention to how your body reacts to things. And another tip that we talked about was sowing seeds as opposed to immediately trying to harvest the crop. And the last tip was just breathe, people. Breathe in, breathe out, take deep breaths. Okay?
Stop.
Sometimes we need just to sit back, take a minute, and just breathe. And that was basically the recap of the live session that we did. In the previous Zoom session, we talked about forgiveness of self as well. And so Shamari's here is going to talk to you, about the definition of forgiveness of self that we're going to be going with in today's live session.
So, as always, we are constantly taking feedback from you all and looking for new topics and things for us to talk about and things that you are actually interested in. And so, this topic for today was something that came out of one of the sessions, a Zoom session about 2 weeks ago. So, we started to talk about forgiveness and what it means to be ADOS, and we were talking about anxiety, and we were talking about frustration. And the framing for this is actually what came out of that Zoom session. So, in trying to give people a way to conceptualize the frustration that ADOS go through, particularly once you know that you are ADOS and you start to hear the data and you read the books and you start to experience this awakening, this enlightenment, if you will, is that it's very similar to the stages of grief and loss. And so we've been thinking about that idea a lot over the past couple of weeks. And so we decided to flesh that out a little bit more for you all today. So in service of that, this show today is all about forgiveness, but specifically forgiveness of the self. In many instances, forgiveness is reserved for other people and other groups. But as ADOS people, one of the things that is becoming very salient is the fact that we're going through a healing process, but also a forgiving process of ourselves. So let's just talk about forgiveness for a moment. And we're going to take a working definition from, this was a 1998 study where you had a bunch of psychologists and philosophers who came together at the University of Wisconsin, and they met weekly for about 4 years. And they decided that this was the definition of forgiveness that they would use going forward. And it says, a willingness to abandon one's right to resentment, negative judgment, and indifferent behavior to one who unjustly injured us while fostering the undeserved qualities of compassion, generosity, and even love toward him or her. And when we think about forgiveness and what it means, let's go back to that definition and highlight a couple of things here. So you want to abandon the right to resentment, abandon the right to negative judgment, and the indifferent behavior to one who has unjustly injured us. So when we think about ADOS and forgiving ourselves, one of the big challenges here is that we get frustrated because we feel like we should have known. We feel like, things are not moving fast enough, and we start to internalize this frustration that comes along with living in a society and living in a country where we're constantly being told that we're not good enough and that our best efforts are not good enough, and we're constantly being told that everything that we do is second best, regardless of how much we have done. We never have enough education, we never have enough money, we never have enough talent, we never have enough of anything. And the reality is that we have enough of all of these things, but we're a part of a system that the deck is stacked against us. All right. So, and when we look at that, how does that impact us? Well, let's look at the stages of grief and loss. So, stages of grief and loss, the first step is denial. Then you have anger. Then you have bargaining. And then you have depression. And then you have acceptance. All right. So, if we are looking at this, now the stages of grief came from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She developed these while working with terminally ill people. And she observed that there were some striking similarities in each person's process. Excuse me. And those observations became what we now call the stages of grief. And the book that she wrote is called On Death and Dying. So the first step is denial. Now, what does denial do? Denial allows one more time to process information because you're not fully accepting of what happened. You're kind of pushing off the inevitable, and you're kind of making space for the possibility that whatever has happened that you are unwilling to accept didn't happen or is not going to impact you in the ways that you would like for it to or like it not to. And so what is that? That's a defense mechanism. And what do? They help to numb the emotional impact, the negative emotional impact, because nobody likes to feel hurt. Nobody likes to feel pain. Nobody likes to feel sorrow. But these are real things that happen in real life. And if you are ADOS, then these are things that are happening to you on a consistent basis. And sometimes you don't even understand or know exactly where it's coming from. But as ADOS, we start to put these things together through the data. We put it together through the reading. We start to put it together through the information that you now understand and the life experience that you now understand. And what does Yvette call it? The accrued disadvantage and the oppression that comes along with our lineage. And once you begin to understand that, some of us don't want to accept it. It's hard to accept. So this is also the stage that tends to frustrate so many ADOS because those of us that have not had access to the information, those of us who have not accepted, those of us who have not read, those of us who want to believe that, bootstrapperism, those of us that want to believe that we can be the exceptional Negro, those of us that feel like there's some part of us that if we work harder, if we get another degree, if we do all these other things that America has told us that we can do, that we'll be able to access the American dream that we are locked out of. So some of the examples, Sharon, I see you nod your head because I know this is one of the ones that really struck a chord with you, the American dream, right?
Yes, thinking that you can achieve the American dream is something that many of us think that we can do. And I feel like it's a constant theme that we are often still fighting and trying to achieve. And it's kind of hard to realize like that the American dream doesn't include us. The American dream is not for us. It's like it's constantly moving and fading away from us as we constantly are trying to go towards it. But like as you mentioned, the systems are against us. They are built to be against us. And so we could fight, we could get all the degrees, we can get all the education, we could straighten our hair, we could change our accent, we could do all the things that white supremacy has conditioned us to believe that we need to do. But that American dream is going to be unachievable, and even when you think that you may have reached it, it could easily be like taken away.
Yeah, exactly right. And what happens then when we realize that, straightening the hair is never going to be straight enough, skin's never going to be light enough, we're never going to be smart enough, never going to be talented enough. Then what happens? We get mad. We experience anger. Some of us even experience rage, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the steps of the stages of grief and loss.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind that these things don't have to happen in any particular order. Like we listed them in denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, but you can move in and out of different stages at any point in time. It's non-linear. You can actually inhabit more than one stage at the same time, right? So let's talk about the anger.
I feel like also anger is a stage that we are constantly in.
Yeah.
Anger is a secondary emotion. Like we're feeling something else, but we're expressing anger. Most of the time, whenever you're expressing anger, you're either actually feeling hurt, you're feeling disappointed,
Yep.
you're feeling sad, but you don't know how to express those things. So
Yep.
you lash out, or you just express your emotions in aggressive ways sometimes. And anger has a masking effect. You're really basically just like masking what your true emotions are. And as American descendants of slavery, you look at our history, like, of course we're in a constant state of anger, but we're also probably feeling, sad. We're probably feeling disappointed. We're probably feeling tired. Tired. But you're masking that
Yes.
as anger. You know, anger is often employed in place of another emotion that is hard for us to manage or deal with. Hurt, something, or pain. These things that they claim that we're so strong and we're resilient. We tired. um, and disappointment, resentment, and we are feeling a lot of those things. We're humans, we're still fighting. We are some fighting people because it's like we've been fighting for our lives. Like all my life I had to fight. That is American descendants of slavery.
Right.
Like all my life I had to fight. That is us.
Literally.
Literally. And we also can have anger also towards other American descendants of slavery, especially those who are not in the same place as us, those who don't have the same knowledge or education in us, or who are not in the agreements with the things that we may believe or
That are still in denial.
yes, still in denial, definitely. Of course, we got anger towards white supremacy. Like, my gosh, yes, we definitely have anger towards white supremacy. You could have anger towards your employers because they're not treating you fairly, or your white counterparts are getting a better salary than you, getting treated better than you in the workplace, or privileges. Anger towards your friends. We know we can have anger towards our family. And there are times where you can have anger towards yourself too.
Yep.
You could definitely be angry at yourself. Sometimes whenever we are in a state of confusion about how we're feeling, or we're angry, we don't know what we're mad at, sometimes it maybe you're mad at yourself. And you can have anger towards yourself because you didn't know or had access to a lot of knowledge or certain information from beforehand like you do now. And so that could also be like a stage of grief as well, just like anger towards ourselves or other people, and just feeling just frustrated.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to go back to that you touched on, Sharona, that I think are really important for the people. So one is this idea that anger is a secondary emotion. It's absolutely correct. And then we have the key areas. I like that explanation. Anger is a way to mask the true emotions. Yes. And the other thing I want to point out is that typically, in many situations, anger is displaced or misplaced. Displaced meaning that it's directed at an individual or an entity for whom it is not appropriate, or who is not responsible for causing you the who has not aggrieved you, who has not done you wrong. So when you talk about being angry with your family, when you talk about being angry with your friends, when you talk about being angry with yourself, frequently that is displaced or misplaced anger that we're talking about there. And then when we talk about
before you even go past that, you got to think about those times where your mama or your daddy came home from work stressed out, mad, and just took it out on you. That was displaced. I mean, that was misplaced or displaced anger. Sorry for tongue tying my words. Like, and they're part of that at their employers, or something that happened at work, and as American descendants of slavery in the workplace, we don't have much power, privilege, control, anything. We just always have to just deal with what we did with that work, and that leaves you frustrated, leaves you angry, and then you come home, and sometimes you take it out on the people at home.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
absolutely right.
I felt that, so that's why I wanted to bring that up when you said that, Shamar.
You felt that one in your spirit.
I felt that one in my spirit.
Yeah. and then going back to this idea of being angry at ourselves, a lot of times we can end up having misplaced or displaced anger at ourselves because we buy into this idea that of exceptionalism and this aspirational belief that we can all be Beyonce, we can all be LeBron, we can all be these individuals who are aberrations of Black existence, of aberrations of ADOS existence. And I see here in the chat a Black gay man, YBDC, we're angry with ourselves for voting for Barack Obama. Come on now. Come on, somebody. That's a big one because, back in, that was what, 2008 when Obama was elected. We all thought he was, Mr. Hope and Mr. Change, and we all bought into this idea that, this is going to be our first Black president. And for many of us, we didn't really understand. I won't even say we didn't understand it, but we did not have the language for what we were experiencing. Because I think many of us knew that, yes, he was Black, and he is phenotypically, meaning like what he looks like on the outside, he's a Black man, but his experience is more aligned with that of white men in America. His father is Kenyan and his mother is a white woman, and his experience is not the same as mine or yours or many of us in the chat. Like, it's a very different experience in ADOS in America than it is to grow up, the son of a Kenyan immigrant and a white woman in America. And so, again, now, fast forward 12 years later, and during the 8 years that he was there, very little that was ever done specifically for us. And in many instances, we were a lot worse off than when he took office. And there's this great disappointment that happened, this letdown that happened, and that triggers the anger. Yeah.
And I think that is also another prime example of a situation that led many of us through the 5 stages of grief too, because at the time we didn't have the language, or probably not even the knowledge. Like, some of us, like, we were young and we didn't know what we know now. So I think that could also be a situation too that would lead you through the 5 stages of grief. You were in denial, about your vote, and then once you, came to the light, you had some anger. Then you tried to bargain and try to validate your vote through that bargaining stage.
Yep.
And then you may have been into another stage of grief, which is depression, where you were just sad and like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I did this. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt about how this presidency, how this is about. So then you hopefully reach the stage of acceptance where you accept for what you did, and you do better the next time. Which I actually have really seen that play out in one of the most recent elections, where people have come to the part of where they are coming to understand about, okay, we messed up. We voted because it is. I'm gonna vote better the next time. I did see that play out a lot over social media. That was actually a very good example, and I'm very glad that came up in the chat. Thank you so much, Black Gay Man YBDC, for bringing that up in the chat. That's a perfect one about the 5 stages that people went through.
Yeah, and what a lot of people are about to go through now with this whole Biden-Harris president-elect situation. But before we get off on a tangent, let's move into bargaining, which is, we're going to say it's the third step for the sake of ordering it for you all today. But like we said earlier, it's not necessarily something that has to come in the linear fashion. It doesn't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can be 1, 5, 3, 4, 2. It can be 2, 3, 5, 4, 1. But bargaining is an attempt to regain control. Think about it. It's an attempt to regain control, because if you've gone through denial and you've been angry, then you have to try to self-regulate. Human beings and the human mind is a beautiful thing. And we're always going to try to come back to our baseline. And one of the ways that we're going to try to come back to that baseline is we're going to start doing that self-talk. We're going to start trying to reconcile what is not with what is. And so one of the ways that we do that is the bargaining. So if you've ever caught yourself saying either the what ifs or the if only, the what ifs or the if, well, what if What if, what if my hair was straighter, or what if I were taller, or what if my skin were lighter, or what if, I had been a better employee, or what if I had more education, or what if this and what if that, or if only. That's bargaining. That's what happens when people are attempting to try and reconcile and make peace with a frustrating situation. That is one of the stages of grief. You got the denial, anger, and you move into trying to reconcile those things by bargaining with yourself, bargaining with your environment, bargaining with your relationships, where you try and bring some sort of stability back into the situation.
And this also reminds me too of imposter syndrome as well, like,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
something that we suffer
Mm-hmm.
from a lot. We suffer from imposter syndrome all the time. And imposter syndrome, as you know, it's like a psychological pattern in which you constantly doubt your skills, you doubt your talents, you just don't think you belong. You're constantly questioning yourself. That's basically imposter syndrome, and it definitely hits harder on American descendants of slavery, where we're constantly doubting ourselves in many spaces, feeling like, we shouldn't belong, or maybe I'm not deserving, or maybe I'm not
Mm-hmm.
worth it, or nothing like that. And it also stems from, white supremacy as well, because that's what white supremacy wants us to feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we are learning about all of this, like, procedural things like that, it can be helpful to understand that it's something normal that we all go through. And it could also be helpful for you to try to combat it as well. But it's definitely a common thing that hits American descendants of slavery. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, we've always been told we don't belong. Couldn't even
Yep.
drink from the same water fountains. Like, even how they do our housing and
Mm-hmm.
redlining and our schools and things like that. It's literally been embedded into our lives. So that's basically what that reminds me of, which also sometimes lead to politics and respectability as well, where people,
Mm-hmm.
try to police other American descendants of
Mm-hmm.
slavery within our communities, because they technically also suffer from imposter syndrome as well, but they're kind of projected it onto you and trying to get you aligned
Mm-hmm.
with the rules that have also been stemmed a bit from white supremacy, to where we're trying to make ourselves belong in a space where we do belong and where we do deserve to be, but we feel like we got to do this extra stuff. Okay. So that's almost like a way of us trying to bargain as well. Part of
Mm-hmm.
responsibility is another way of bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
Just thought
And
I'll put it out there.
it makes me think about the spaces that we've been taught that we belong. Like how are the ways that black people and American descendants of slavery in this country can succeed, can excel? Well, let's look at it. Sports, entertainment, performers. Um, like what other ones can you think of, Sharon? I'm thinking we see ourselves frequently as like city employees and things like that, but we don't necessarily see a lot of examples of doctors and lawyers and academics and researchers and things that are not necessarily. And let me just be perfectly clear: there is nothing wrong with blue collar work. But there
Nothing.
is something wrong with being told that that's the only thing that you can aspire to, and that's the
Yes.
only thing that you are capable of.
Yes.
If you have not seen it and you cannot dream it, then you can't be it. You don't know how to go after that. And for those people that end up in situations where, whether it's young people or, when you're early in your career or you're in, you know, okay, I'll put it this way: this can happen to people. This feeling of imposter syndrome can happen to you when you're young, as a kid. It can happen to you when you're adolescent. It can happen to you as a young adult. It can happen to you in middle age. It can happen to you when you're well into your established career. Because what I have seen is that the further up the ladder we go, regardless of what profession we are in, there are fewer and fewer of us. And if you don't see representation of yourself, you feel like you do not belong there. And the tendency is for us to look around, and if we don't see people that remind us of ourselves, and we don't see people that look like us, then we feel like we don't belong. And it's going to make you feel like you are an imposter, like you are not supposed to be there. And you're going to question how you got there. You're going to question whether or not you're supposed to be there. You're going to question whether or not you're going to be accepted while you are there.
You're gonna feel so uncomfortable too. I'm just thinking about
Mm-hmm.
the uncomfort that you feel and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, and you may not
Mm-hmm.
even speak up when you need to. Just you'll have people just running over you because you just
Yep.
don't feel like you have a support or community. You're just there alone, so you don't feel like you can
Mm-hmm.
speak up or speak out, or you just feel you may. I mean, I don't want to say this, but sometimes you just feel weak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, but that's real.
yeah.
It's like being happy to be somewhere and unhappy to be somewhere all at the same time. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
That's
having these conflicting emotions. Like, I'm so happy to be here, but I don't like it. Just it feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right. I feel out of place, and you can't really enjoy the success that you have had. You
mm-hmm.
can't enjoy the accomplishments that you have made because you're constantly questioning. You're constantly, asking yourself whether or not you deserve them. And this is what I'm gonna say to any ADOS people out there listening to us, wherever you are. I already know you worked hard. I already know you, especially if you. It does not matter if you are in a place that you typically see us, or if you're in a place where you might be the only one. Either way, you had to work very hard to get there, because the deck is already stacked against you from the beginning. So stand in your accomplishments, stand in your achievements, and know that you belong there, and show up and show out. And matter of fact, most importantly, make a way for somebody else once you get in there. So going through all of this, denial, you got the anger, you got the bargaining. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of emotional and psychological work that is having to happen all at the same time. And we know what can happen. And we've talked about this a little bit too in the Zooms and on the live streams about what depression is. And depression is our response to things that have already occurred. And we know there are things always happening to us as American descendants of slavery that can have us in our feelings, that can have us, feeling down on ourselves, that can impact our self-esteem, that can impact our relationships, whether it's friends, family, co-workers. And you start to get a little down. You
Mm-hmm.
start to feel a little overwhelmed. You
Mm-hmm.
start to feel a little hopeless. You start to feel a little helpless. You stop being able to imagine a future, or if you can see into your future, you don't see the same things that you saw before, because you start to lose the capacity to really see yourself achieving and to see yourself doing. These are the hallmarks of depression. This is how you know that you are experiencing what we call low mood, depressive episodes. And it's frustrating because for so many of us, we are part of the reason why we even started Selful Soul Sunday is because we want to, and hit that tagline, promote it's a virtual space that promotes a positive relationship between American descendants of slavery and mental health and wellness. And why do we even need to do that? Because this is not something that we're brought up in. This is not something that we're exposed to throughout the course of life as being normal. This is something that many of us are just coming to now
Mm-hmm.
in recent history. Like if you had told me when I was a kid that I would be or could even be a therapist, I'd be looking at you like, no. But at the same time, if somebody had told me I could do that, if I had seen somebody doing it, I probably would have been very attracted to that. Because in many instances, who you are and what you become is already there in you from the beginning. But whether or not it's encouraged, whether or not it is identified, whether or not it is supported and nurtured, is a lot of times what happens to ADOS, and that it doesn't happen in that way. Sharona?
Another thing I was just thinking about, like for depression, finding as a therapist, I find it as something too that a lot of us are not familiar with that term, but it is something that we have experienced and along our lives in many different ways. as American descendants of slavery due to the systems of oppression that we constantly have to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have the language for it, but it's definitely something that's really common amongst our community. And it's because of our lives. It's because of things that we deal with. It's because of the things that we're constantly up against. But you may not feel like you've actually have experienced it because depression can look different for many people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And as American descendants of slavery, because of what we're constantly dealing with and fighting for within our lives, it's almost like sometimes we didn't even have the time or the space to even feel out our emotions and what it is that we are experiencing internally or going through because we're trying to constantly survive in America,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're
Yeah.
constantly trying to, try to make sure we have enough money to feed our families. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to, maintain in the workplace and not go insane.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with our white counterparts can definitely be a lot. And maybe you had your car broke down. It's like we got so much going on in our lives that sometimes we didn't realize that we were actually depressed because we didn't have the space or the opportunity time to feel our emotions. But it's definitely something that is prominent within our communities. And a lot of times our behaviors, had we known that, depression can look different for many different people in different ways, it don't always just show up as a sad or a low mood. It can also show up as anger too.
Mm-hmm.
It can show up in you spending, less time with, your family. It could show up in like your work, like, you're not doing as good at work. It could show up in how you're parenting. It could show up in many different forms of ways. But depression is something that's very common and it's normal, and it's an appropriate response to the gravity of the situations that we are constantly dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very common mental health condition. I want to say it's very normal. We're going to go
And
through.
it makes me think about emotions as being a burden. Like we don't have the luxury of
Yeah, that's
having
it. We don't have
emotions.
that luxury. You're right.
We don't have the luxury of experiencing our emotions in the full range as other groups of people in this country. And as you were talking, it made me think about, this might date myself, but whatever. Look, I'm a man of a certain age, yes. It made me think about that Erica Badu song, the Bag Lady song. And it made me think about it differently just now, how basically that woman was depressed. She had a whole bunch of stuff going on in her life that was holding her down. And it you gonna miss your bus dragging all them bags like that. Now, think about that. Like this is somebody who is going through some very valid emotional, having some very valid emotional struggles. But once again, because we are ADOS, you gonna miss your bus dragging all them bags like that. Well, you know what? We might need to reframe that a little bit. Maybe you might miss that first bus, but there is another. Look, what did they say? First bus, you missed that bus, another one coming 10, 15 minutes later. Well, in that 10 to 15 minutes later, maybe you can do some things to lighten your emotional load so that when you get on that bus and get to your next destination, you don't have to carry all that stuff with you. So that's what I'm gonna say to the bag ladies and the bag men out there is access and take advantage of people like myself and Sharona in our community that have, we've stepped into this space to make ourselves available to you because we want to be of assistance and we want to be of service to you. We want to help to change the narrative around Black people and mental health. And you don't have to keep feeling like, you feeling like it's something wrong with you for dragging those bags. There's a reason why you have those bags. There's a reason why you are feeling the way that you are feeling. And people like us can help you to resolve those conflicts. So, final stage, Sharona, acceptance.
Acceptance is one of the last stages of grief. Now, as we said, these things don't go in order. You could experience them in different ways, but
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
acceptance is one of the last stages of grief. And that's basically the consolidation and integration of the experience into your life narrative. Like everything's come together for you, and you have accepted where you are and accepted your circumstances of the situations and whatever it is that put you through these different stages of grief. You have integrated the lessons learned from the previous knowledge. And you tend to get to a place where you are having this feeling of empowerment and you're in control of self, like that those feelings have returned back to you basically. And you're feeling better, you're feeling empowered, and you're feeling in control of yourself, and you're ready to keep it
Mm-hmm.
going and moving.
Mm-hmm.
And you you try to get involved and maybe get involved with the American Descendants of Slavery movement. Basically, like, one of the things I've done is this, trying to get involved in a space to helping out others within my community, right? And spreading knowledge and tips, or just having conversations with Shamari. Because, like I've been through these different stages of grief for like the same reasons that we've been talking about. And I can say I'm pretty much at a place of acceptance and, integrating the knowledge, and, want to get involved and giving back to my community, play my part. You find yourself identifying the places where your contributions are valued and appreciated. This makes me think about how we are also now valuing ourselves too within like our mental health and taking care of ourselves and valuing ourselves also in the workplaces, and making sure we are also, being appreciated for the things that we've done, and being mindful who we're surrounding ourselves with as well. That makes me think of that. And we are seeking and establishing community.
Yeah, and Sharona, one of the things I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you talk now is just the importance of having ADOS mental health professionals, and we need more of us. So if there are young people out there listening, we encourage you to be social workers, to be psychologists, to be psychiatrists, to be counselors, because we need you. Your community needs you. And then also, and for those of you that are listening, if you are someone who is ADOS and you are a mental health provider, get in contact with us, because we're working in the background with people who are trying to create networks and platforms for us to be able to access and to reach the people, as well as reaching each other. And part of what has really got me thinking about is the importance, why it's so important to have us be able to sit with someone who has a similar experience. Because as I'm listening to you speak, I'm like thinking about all of the explaining and all of the background that you have to give somebody who doesn't share your experience. How, just looking at your face now and sitting here and having my own experience and recognizing that, yeah, we've gone through these same things and are going through these same things as the people that we work with. And that's going to provide you with a very different clinical experience than working with somebody who, cultural competency is one thing, but guess what? I don't really need you to be culturally competent. I need you to be culturally astute. Like, I would much rather you be somebody who is of my culture, so I don't have to try and explain my culture to you, because, there's certain nuances and certain things that happen, and whether it's a look or whether it's a glance or whether, it's a shared history of music and song and culture and things that we can use to communicate with one another, that help to shift that narrative and help to move people from a depressive state into, a more elevated mood, into a more, a healthier place of existing. And, matter of fact, and speaking of healthier ways to exist and to navigate space, Sharona, let's get into some self-care tips, because we want to be mindful of the time. We got about maybe 10 minutes or so left for today, but we want to make sure that with some ways to try and manage some of these frustrations and to manage the emotional distress as ADOS people. So, Sharona, I'll give that back to you.
All right. Self care tips. So, one of the things that I do highly recommend when it comes to us taking care of ourselves, in addition to, you know, taking time out for yourself, spend some time alone with yourself, taking deep breaths,
Mm-hmm.
meditating, do some reflections, have your glass of wine or beer or whatever it is that you drink to decompress, burn
Mm-hmm.
you a candle that smells good and really soothes your soul, or sage, or light of incense. In addition to those things, access your community. Look within your community and seek out other people, because it's so important as well to be amongst, like-minded individuals and linking
Mm-hmm.
with them. There's a lot of resources, within our communities. Seek them out. Seek out these resources. Link up with other like-minded individuals as well, and like spend some time together, and plan some things out, or do whatever it is that you need to do to make yourself feel calm and composed. But I also want you to know too, if you ever need to cry, that is okay as well.
Okay.
Crying is healthy. Think about whenever you're crying and the tears are coming down, that's that pain, or that's those toxins leaving your body.
Mm-hmm.
Crying is,
Mm-hmm.
also important and very normal. And there's
Men, it's okay for us
absolutely,
to cry too.
yes,
Let's put that in there.
what we, yeah,
Men, it's okay for us to
man,
cry
it
too.
is okay for you to
Mm-hmm.
cry too, because you are also a human. Let me look. ADOS men, because I know you all are often raised that you can't express your emotions, and crying is a female trait. It's all BS. You can cry as well because you have emotions. You are human, and you all go through some like y'all go through some things. So like, do
Mm-hmm.
what you got to do for you. Um,
Look, and ladies, I'm gonna just tell you like this: you want a man that has the capacity to show emotion because he, that means he's gonna be able to show up for you. That means he's gonna be accessible to you. And ladies, also, we got to stop raising these boys and telling them that stop crying, stop doing this because that's for females. Okay, and then they get older, and all of a sudden you want to tell us that we don't ever know how to show emotions. We don't ever know how to be vulnerable. Well, my whole life I've been told that those were female traits and that I should not access that part of myself. But then when I get older, I'm told that I'm chastised for not being able, from doing exactly what I've been trained to do. So let's start changing the narrative about how we are raising our boys in particular. It's okay to be a fully well-rounded, emotionally accessible human being. That's okay.
yeah,
So that
definitely.
it's all right. Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted
And one of the last tips that I want to say is like utilize this space as well.
you.
Utilize
Mhm.
our lives,
Mhm.
utilize our Zooms that we do.
Mhm.
Like we do these things bi-weekly. We alternate lives and we alternate our Zooms. Our Zooms are a bit more intimate spaces where we all come together within like a session and delve deeper into topic. Um, and the live, is a bit more general than the Zoom sessions. But utilize these spaces as well. This
Yeah,
can be a bit therapeutic for you too.
yeah, and Sharon, I see Alonzo Johnson says I find myself crying a lot. Maybe it's age. You know what? It might be a little bit of age. It might be a little bit of letting go and shedding some of these preconceived notions of what it means to be a man because it's hard being ADOS, whether you are a man or a woman. It does not matter. It being ADOS is hard, and I guess let me say this while we got the floor here for a second, because regardless of what identities you may hold as an individual, The most consequential identity that any of us will have as ADOS is the fact that we are ADOS. And it is nonsensical and fruitless for us to get caught up in fighting over other identities that have no consequence on the collective. So when I say that the most consequential is your ADOS identity, that's the one that influences, informs, and impacts every other identity that you have, whether it's man or woman, gay, straight, tall, short, thick, thin. All of those things are going to be informed and impacted by your ADOS identity. And so we, as a group of people, need to begin to move in a way that acknowledges that fact.
Yep.
We are all ADOS first. Everything else is secondary. All right. So, go ahead, Sharon.
We both said at the same time.
Right.
So, we just want to thank all of you for taking your time out this Sunday to come and listen to us and discuss with us. Well, you know what I mean. Forgiveness of self. And I hope you all took quite a bit away from, the discussion of the 5 stages of grief. Quick recap is anger and denial, depression, bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, Shamar, this is random, and I know we're finna close. But this also kind of reminds me of, whenever you are really angry and you start to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say you just got in a fight with someone, like a physical fight, and you really mad, but the tears are running down your eyes. That's a prime example of anger masking an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
That person may have physically harmed you or whatnot. You may have just got to a physical fight, but you feel hurt by that, even though you expressed it through anger. That was just something random that popped up in my mind.
It's all right.
Express that as an example of anger masking an emotion. Okay? Yeah. But we want to thank all of you for coming out and spending some time with us this lovely, soulful Sunday. And I hope.
Don't forget to join us on January 3rd. We will be back on the Zoom session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be a Zoom session. And we just want to wish you all a happy holidays. Be safe. COVID is very much still alive. Try to take these time out to also practice as much self-care as you can and take care of you and have a happy new year. Hopefully 2021 comes in with some good sense. And thank you all so much.
We love you. We appreciate you.
Yes, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wait a minute. And then if you want to reach out to us, if you have any feedback or comments,